Welcome to the first episode of Based Battles of History. Yes, that is what I'm calling this series. Anyway, this will basically be a series of the coolest battles I've heard of or read about. And yes, a lot of them are going to be Scottish. Get over it. I am incredibly biased about Scottish history. Also, don't worry to any of my non-Scottish viewers or people who do not care about Scottish history, because it won't strictly be Scottish battles, Scottish people, Scottish events. More or less, the first couple videos of this channel will be Scottish focused, because I feel like a lot of the stuff isn't talked about or isn't well known. For example, the Black Douglas, Andrew Murray, even Robert the Bruce and William Wallace. I won't get into it that much, but Braveheart isn't William Wallace, it's Robert the Bruce. In 1098, the Hebrides and the Isle of Man, but at the time they were known as the Suruyar. I am not Scandinavian, I butchered that.
You're butchering my beautiful language.
Definitely. Or in English, the Southern Isles. They were signed over to Norway by King Edgar of Scotland. Cuck. These islands were run by a succession of Norwegian kings, Viking kings of the Isles until around 1157, when Somerled wrested control of the islands from his brother-in-law, Godred. In medieval history, it's always a brother, an uncle, or your son. So family was really a concept back then. It was more or less they're going to kill you at one point. But then Somerled died in battle, and the battle ran through, and his sons inherited the Isles in 1164. Then, after a little time jump to 1240, King Alexander II of Scotland was asking to buy the Hebrides, but this was ignored by Norway. So when Alexander III became King of Scotland, yes, the third, the one that died trying to get some pussy and then plunged Scotland into the maddest and most crucial point in Scottish history, the War of Independence against England. Yes, that man. With support of the clans, King Alexander III sent an ultimatum to the Kingdom of Norway, and the ultimatum basically said, let us buy the islands or I'm going to kill you. Based. This, however, was also ignored by the Norwegians, because of course it was. And in 1262, Alexander III ordered William, Earl of Ross, to attack and capture the Isle of Skye, starting the Scottish-Norwegian War. In order to regain control, King Haakon IV sent a fleet believed to be in the range of 120 to 200 ships. But this is debatable because we don't actually know how many ships were there. This fleet was sent to the Firth of Clyde during the late summer of 1263. After seeing this massive fleet, King Alexander III basically shat himself and called for a diplomatic solution. But here's the thing, Alexander III basically pulled a sneaky fast one over the Norwegians and delayed them to buy himself more time to get more soldiers and to possibly stall the Norwegians into the stormy and winter months.
In the business, we call this foreshadowing.
By late September, Haakon's fleet occupied the Firth of Clyde, and after the negotiations broke down, Haakon brought the bulk of his fleet to the anchor off at the Cumbres so that he could invade Scotland at any point of his choosing. During this, the Scottish army had been mustering troops at Ayr, and under the command of Alexander, there's two of them, Alexander Stewart of Dundonald, the fourth High Steward of Scotland, began moving north, shadowing Haakon's movements out the Clyde. And on the night of the 30th September, a storm blew an unknown amount of Haakon's ships towards Largs, which caused several ships to be beached, broken and scattered. However, the fatalities weren't that high, given, crashing on a beach of a boat. You'd think it'd be higher, but it wasn't that high. And while the crews were salvaging their ships, they became under heavy attack from small parties of Scots, which led to Haakon sending more ships to assist the stranded Norwegians. And on the 2nd of October, the Scottish army arrived at showtime. The Scottish army, led by Alexander of Dundonald, comprised of mainly infantry, cavalry and archers, and with some accounts this army is rumoured to have around 1,000 to 2,000 soldiers, but this is just modern estimates, so please take it with a grain of salt because, as I said before, we don't know. The Norwegians were gathered in two groups, A larger main force on the beach comprised of around 700 to 800 men, and a small contingent on a nearby mound believed to be around 200 men. With the advance of the Scottish army, it threatened to divide the two forces, which isn't quite, isn't good for a battle. So, the small contingent fell back from the mound to regroup. However, the larger contingent of Norwegian soldiers believed that they were retreating. So they also began retreating from the battle, and many fled back to the ships. The beach then became a battleground as fierce fighting erupted, with the Scots taking a strong position on the mound that had once been held by the Norwegians. After hours of intense skirmishing, the Norwegians managed to retake the mound and push the Scots back, and as they wore on, the Scots withdrew, leaving the Norwegians to reclaim their ships. They returned at dawn the next day to gather their fallen comrades. In the end, it is believed that both sides suffered similar casualties, with modern estimates of each side losing between 50 to 100 men in both sides. And ultimately, this battle ended in a draw. Now, you might be saying, Lugs, why are you talking about the battle if it ended in a draw and didn't have any major casualties? Well, shut the fuck up, you nerd. I've not finished the video, you rude bastard. With this mogging from the Scots and Mother Nature, Haakon's fleet sailed to Orkney to regroup, and then he died in Kirkwall from illness. Mogged again. And then, 4 years later, on the 2nd of July 1266, the Treaty of Perth was signed by Haakon's successor, King Magnus, and with this treaty, 25 years of disputed ownership of the Sørøyar, that may be right this time, was solved. King Alexander III made payment of 4,000 marks and promised annuity. I don't know how to pronounce that word, I'll put it on screen, of 100 marks to King Magnus in return for this payment. He gave recognition of Norway's sovereignty over Nordfjord, or in English, the Northern Isles, or in other words, the Northern Isles of Orkney and the Shetlands. Scotland was promised sovereignty over the Hebrides and the Isle of Man, with other issues over land ownership being also clarified up as part of this treaty. Now, little Timmy, your rude question you mentioned earlier on can now be answered. Why was this battle a video? And why is this battle so well known in Scottish, culture? That is because the perspectives of the battle and what they actually led to. And also, it's a fun topic. The battle marked the turning point in Scottish efforts to push back Norwegian influence in the Western Isles. King Alexander IV successfully resisted the Norsemen and capitalised on the inability to regroup after the ships were damaged by a storm. The eventual Treaty of Perth is often linked to this battle, as it was viewed as the beginning of Norwegian waning influence. However, their withdrawal left the Western Isles of Scotland vulnerable to the Scottish army. The Scottish side proclaimed the battle as a significant victory in their propaganda as well, which, inspired the populace. So, the Scottish view it as a victory, more or less. How did the Norwegians view it? They see it as a draw as well as us, and this is because the battle itself was relatively small and with limited forces involved. So, to sum it up, we see it as a victory because we were able to push back the Norwegians and it led Haakon to flee to Orkney, which maybe was how we got sick. That's just me speculating. So to sum it up, the reason why we see this as a victory, even though it's a draw, is because the symbolism of us defeating the Norwegians, holding them back, and the eventual butterfly effect of this battle in the Treaty of Perth. And also it limited Haakon's ability to control the Western Isles. If you're interested in this battle even more now, you can even go to Largs and see the battle monument, even though it's not in the right spot because, as I said, we do not know where it actually took place. It also has a lot of Viking themed stuff and a Viking statue. I've also been there, so I'll make sure a picture of that. However, there's also a Viking museum. But I wouldn't know that because my girlfriend, who's been there a million times, failed to remember this key information even though the whole time I was talking about the Battle of Largs. I've still not forgiven that. Anyway, thank you for watching this video. My sources are in the description if you want to look further into it. But if you enjoyed and want to see more, then leave a like and a comment and caress that subscribe button.